Alright, welcome back. Let's say that you were instructed by the security team in your organization that every username in your list must contain at least one digit. So we have now this list of users, John, Linda, Mary, and Ahmed, and the security team has advised you that this username is not valid. It must contain at least a number, a digit. So now you need to loop through all the usernames in the list and add a number or two to it. Let's see how we can approach this problem. First, choose a number. We could have written code to generate random numbers, but let's keep the example simple. So let's say that we have chosen that the number that we are going to add to each user is going to be 1, 2, 3. Let's, of course, make this a string because we are going to concatenate the username and the number. So if you left this like this is an important concept to grasp. If you left this like that and you print it, for example, or you try to make something like this, username, if this is a username plus 1, 2, 3, this won't work. Because the username in this case is going to be a string and this is a number, so concatenation won't work. So for that, you will need to ensure that this number is stored as a string and not as a number. Okay. Now, the traditional way of dealing with this problem or with this request is to loop through the users. Let's do a simple loop for I in range. And the reason I'm using range is going to be obvious in a moment. 0 for the start and the length of the list of the usernames or the users, like this. So for I, or in range 0 to the length of users, we are going to type users I equals users I plus the num. Okay, so let's first discuss why I did that loop instead of something like this for you, for example, in users, which is the traditional way of looping in a list. Because if I did that, how am I gonna change the items in the list? For example, for you in users, I could say you is you plus num. Okay, that is fine, but the list stays intact. You have changed each item in the list to contain a number, but the list itself is still intact. You could have created a new list, for example, like users2. I don't want to complicate things, I'm just explaining to you my logic. You could have created a new users list like this, and then say new users, users2 dot append, and put the user. You can see that this is very, very complicated. You are creating now a second list, and then you're gonna substitute, and then you're gonna have two lists, one with the correct usernames or the original usernames, and the other with usernames with numbers appended to it. So the correct way to approach this problem is by using a range and addressing each user by its index. This way we can change each user in the list to be containing a number. Now let's print users after applying this change to it, and let's see what happens. Okay, now we have our requirement fulfilled. Each username does contain a number attached to it. John 123, Linda 123, Mary 123, and Ahmed 123. But fortunately, Python has a much easier way of dealing with such cases. Let's comment out this. Actually, let's comment out all. Let's first delete all the code that we no longer need. Okay. Let's clean our code a little. Okay. And let's comment out those two lines. And let's use what's called list comprehension. List comprehension is a fancy word, but it's very easy to understand. All what we have to do to change each and every item in a list is to just assign the list to a comprehension. A comprehension starts with a square bracket as if you are creating a new list, and then y plus num. You are specifying what you want to do with each item in the list, and this item is going to have whatever variable you choose, whether it was you, I, or any variable of your choice. Then for you in users. That's it. In one line of code, I will achieve the same effect of this loop. Let's first execute the code to see if it works. Okay, we have the same output as the one produced by the loop, but it is shorter, it is more readable, and it is easier to understand. Users, which is the list, this list is going to be changed in place, and then you assign to it the list comprehension. This part of the comprehension is whatever you want to do with the item in the array or in the list. In our case, we are concatenating a number to it, then the normal for you in users. This is called list comprehension. Let's get back to strings for a moment, and I don't think you're going to be surprised to know that strings are treated in Python as lists of characters. So let's remove those for the moment. If I say, for example, message equals hello world. This is a message, it's a variable that contains hello world. This message is a list. If you want a proof for I or whatever, let's say S for string in message, print S, like this. If I execute my code, I'm going to see that I have each and every character in the string printed. Why? Because, as we just mentioned, a string is nothing but a list of characters, and we are printing here each character in this list on its separate line. So print S is going to print you hello world. Okay, so let's do something cool with this list, since now we understand that a string is a list. Let's apply list comprehension to it, like, for example, message equals S plus a space. So we're going to add a space between each character and the other for S in message. But if you want to print it, it won't be printed as a string. If we try to print message like this, let's clear the output in the terminal. It's going to be printed like a list. We need to convert it back to a string, because a string is a special form of lists. In order to do this, I'm going to use one of the very commonly used string functions, which is join. Join is going to take a string, any string, and it's going to take a list. In our case, it's message. And what this is going to do is that it is going to convert the list into a string by joining the items in the list with whatever character I chose. So here I chose nothing, no characters, and I'm going to apply join to this string, to this separator, and give it the message or the list as an argument. So what this is going to do is that it's going to join those characters together and add a separator, which is nothing. This is going to be clearer in a moment. Let's put this in here in the print to see what it looks like. Okay, hello world. And as you can see now, because this list contained each and every character with a space after it, so hello world is printed in this fancy form with a space between each and every character of it. And if you want to understand join in a little more detail, you can even use the join to achieve the same result without using list comprehension. Like, let's comment out this line of code and add a space here. So now I'm going to join each and every character in the list, hello world, adding a space as a separator. If you run this code again, you're going to see that it has the same output, just the same as what was achieved by the list comprehension, but it's, again, more readable and consumes less code. You can add any character you wish as a separator, like an asterisk, for example. Let's see. Now you have an asterisk between each and every character in the list. Okay, that was all for lists, and I hope you got a clear grasp and a clear understanding of lists. We're going to visit them later, both in this course in Python and in later courses in this program when we discuss DevOps, when we, for example, use Ansible, because Ansible is a DevOps tool, a configuration management tool that uses Python as its language. So lists, I have to stress again and again, is one of the most widely used concepts in Python. You have to have a clear understanding of it. So I hope by now you built a solid foundation about this concept. If conditionals in Python, or if conditions, are very easy. They are much easier than if conditions that we studied in Bash. They do not work by examining the exit status of a command. They just work like any if condition in any other higher level language like Java, C, C++, or C# or any other language that uses if conditions. And it just tests for the Boolean value of true or false of whatever expression that is passed to it. So the easy stuff, if 1 is greater than 2, then we have the colon, which, as we mentioned before, starts a code block. Print something is wrong, or something must be wrong, and that, of course, will be the case if 1 was proved to be more than 2. Else, print that's right. Okay, now if we execute that, of course, that's right. 1 is never greater than 2. So this expression gives a Boolean value of false, and that is why if jumped to the else statement and printed, that's right. Let's have a quick revision to the different expressions that if can accept. You have the greater than, of course, you have the less than, you have the less than or equal, you have the greater than, the greater than or equal, and of course you have the equality, which is presented by a double equal sign. So if 1 is equal to 1, you can say that's correct. Let's omit the else. Okay, and the non-equality, which is an exclamation mark followed by an equal sign. Of course, nothing's going to be printed. All this is basic stuff. That's why I'm going through it quickly. Let's now have some practical examples. What if, for example, you have a username that has been grabbed from a database or something, or a user has entered it on the screen. Username is jdoe, and you want to authenticate this user. So we have a user and we have a password, both of which have been grabbed by the program from some source, like, as I said, a web form or a database, and you want to authenticate this user. So you say if username equals jdoe, and now you want to also ensure that the password that the user has entered is the correct one. It's not sufficient to have a username that is correct. You also need to have a valid password. So use the AND keyword here, and AND keyword is going to test for more than one condition, and for AND to evaluate the whole expression to true, both conditions must be true. So AND password is equal to pass 1 to 3. Now, if the username is not jdoe and the password is correct, the whole expression will be false. If the user is correct, it's johndoe, and the password is incorrect, both the whole expression is going to be false. And this is exactly what we want to achieve. We want to ensure that both conditions are true in order to evaluate the whole expression to be true. So if that is the case, print welcome, and the username, just greet the user. Else, let's print an error message, sorry, wrong username or password. Okay, let's try this out, clear the screen. Okay, welcome jdoe, because clearly we have the correct username and password. If we enter the wrong username, it's gonna be sorry, wrong username or password. If we enter the correct username but the incorrect password, again, it's gonna be sorry. Okay, so this is how you can use the AND expression in order to evaluate more than one condition in the same if statement. Now, let's say that you are searching for the username jdoe in the user's name list. In the username list, let's say that we have a list here that is called usernames. Let's create it quickly. Usernames jdoe, let this be the first one. And Linda, Ahmed, Peter. Okay. So that is a list of usernames. Now you want to ensure that jdoe is in this list in order to further authenticate this user or to apply any sort of processing on this user. You want to ensure first that this user does exist in the database, assuming that this list has been grabbed from a database, for example, or an XML file or whatever source of data you have. I can easily use one form of if which is if whatever item you want to search for in usernames. Give it the name of the list. Okay, so this expression using the keyword in is going to evaluate to either true or false depending on whether the item exists in the list or not. So if it exists, let's print jdo found, else let's print no user name found, for example. If we execute this, okay, jdo found. And because, as we mentioned in the previous lecture, strings are treated as lists of characters, you can use this to quickly search for a string inside a string. This is very handy in Python. You're gonna use it lots of times in your daily scripts that you are going to use as a DevOps engineer or even a system administrator. Let's say, for example, that you have a string of text, maybe a long string of text, like for example, a message, an email, for example, that reads, please restart the Apache daemon, for example. Now you want to search for the presence of the word Apache. Let's say that this is a message that has been grabbed from a log file or from an email or whatever. You can say if Apache in message print Apache found, like this. Okay, so now you have Apache found. This is a very handy way to search quickly for a string inside a string. Of course, searching for strings inside strings can involve much complex scenarios, and you can of course involve regular expressions and other forms of complex pattern matching. But for the easiest and simplest form, just searching for a string inside one, you can use the if condition with the in keyword. You can also negate the presence of a string inside a list, or if you are searching for an item, by adding not, like this. So let's say that we're looking for Eduonix, and let's say Eduonix not found. If Eduonix is not in the message, of course Eduonix is not found. So using not before in is going to negate the condition, and it's going to search for the in presence of the string or the item, if this is a list, in the list. Okay, so whether this is a list of characters or a string or just a list of items like this one, it's gonna negate the condition. Now let's have a quick exercise, since now we have a list of usernames. Okay, again, let's say that we want to authenticate a user. So we have a list of usernames and we are searching for the presence of the user in the database first before attempting to authenticate it. But what if the user that entered the username entered it in the incorrect form, like this, jdo, for example? Remember, previously in this course we mentioned that the usernames are by default not case sensitive, so users may opt to enter the usernames in all caps or a first letter caps, or and so on. So you can just deny user access if he or she entered the username in the incorrect case. Only the password should be case sensitive. So let's say that we want to search for the presence of the username that is called jdo in any case. So I can write code like this for you in usernames. So instead of searching for the username using our previous form like this, if jdo in usernames print jdo found, for example, this clearly won't work. Printed nothing. That is because jdo is printed in the incorrect form. Let's assume it is in the other word around. Let's say that the user is stored in the database in small case and the user entered it in the form or in the prompt as this case. Of course, it's going to be the same output because both of them do not have the correct case. So now I have two options. The first one is the easier. I can just ensure that whatever the user entered is in lowercase. So since this is a string, I can apply lower like this. And now jdo is found. That is because whatever the user has entered in the prompt or in the form is going to be converted automatically to lowercase, and it is going to match against a username in the list if it exists, because everything in the list is in lowercase. So this will ensure that whatever case the user chose to enter his or her username, it's going to match if it does exist. The other solution is a longer one. Just adding it here for demonstration, I can just type for you in usernames if u to lower equals the user that we're looking for, then print jdo found and break from the loop so as not to continue searching through the rest of the list items needlessly. And again, it's going to give me the same output. Let's say that the user has entered it in whatever case. Okay, so jdo is found. But of course, the first method is much more concise, much more readable, and it gets the job done. Okay, so that is all about if conditions in this part of the course. In the coming lecture, we are going to start with tuples. Then we are going to move to dictionaries, which are another important concept in Python. So till next lecture, take care.